It had seemed endless. Its dark, trembling reach had stretched across the frozen ground, slowly, fumbling, insecure, but unstoppable. Everything it touched changed shape. In an instant, the familiar had transformed. Monuments raced to keep a steady course along the lines had swung, now compasses pointing towards an uneasy end. Every nook, every crevice became its home, places for it to fester, to thrive. It had never been a fight. The fabled battle never took place. Its battlefields lay unmarked and unscarred. The light had given in.
These are stories I wrote when I was little. They're nothing. A couple of pages ranging to almost full-blown novellas covering topics of war heroes fighting against occupation, teenage love stories, and well, yeah, this one is about a cat doing, well, for all of its like 9 pages, it's not really doing anything. Like I said, they're nothing.
The writer looked out over the pitch blackness of the sea. Despite fearing its dark depths for all of his life, somehow this time, he wasn't scared.
I wrote. That's all I did. Any school assignment I could twist towards creative writing, any free time I had, I yearned to explore the what-ifs that burned in my mind. Surprisingly, maybe, I didn't read much, didn't really watch movies or TV either, for there was no mystery there. Those cases were already solved. Those stories were already told, and whether I sat down and slowly mouthed out every syllable or stared intently at the screen for a couple hours had no impact on the worlds those works contained. I saw little reason to retread the steps taken by far greater writers. I needed agency. I needed an unbeaten path. A path I started on paper and continued on into the next age on the PlayStation 2.
My first stumbling steps into the digital space were with the aid of flight sims on the Amiga 500 and questionably realistic hockey recreations on the NES, but it wasn't until the polygons actually started to resemble the real-life counterparts that something clicked. This medium was different. Just like the endless pages of mindless exploration littering the bedroom floor, these digital stories would go nowhere if I didn't put the work in. The characters would forever live on level 1 if I didn't push them further. Many of the paths may have been predetermined, but no one would take my exact routes along them. No one would see my exact journey. No one would experience my exact story. That was fundamentally mine.
I played everything I could get my hands on. Review scores be damned, if there was a disc nearby, that was getting played. Stories of raccoon thieves, limbless 90s haircuts, and old beat cops started filling my day, and I loved it. It was less open than exploring every word, putting it down on paper, but every impact, every button press, and every shot fired while going through someone else's vision was fundamentally mine.
The years went on, and as the pages of unfinished stories kept piling high on the scratched-up floorboards and the echoes of the haunting PS2 startup sound seemed to bounce around forever, deep blue slowly fading into vivid green, I realized I lacked something. Through our ever-expanding libraries of games, all my friends had managed to carve out their niche. Whether they grew up playing hockey and spent their after-school sessions locked into NHL 04, or if their mom raced them in their garage, handing them carburetors and fuel pumps as baby toys, leading to hours and hours in front of Gran Turismo, they all had that one thing. Their experience. And I lacked that. Guitar Hero. On the PS2, that was about as close as I got. I remember our music teacher somehow got it approved as a teaching tool, and every subsequent class was a never-ending chase of high scores, and the point someone finally mastered the orange button, they were hailed as a god.
This could be my thing. And for a while it felt like it was. Guitar Hero was the gateway to me picking up a real guitar, joining bands and exploring music. The problem was, so did all of my friends, and they were all so much better than me. So as the endless note highways continued on into oblivion, and the printed out ultimate guitar tabs started to challenge for floor space, I struggled. I liked playing music, but it wasn't my outlet. It wasn't my story.
Just a stone's throw over the Baltic away, a group of people had a few years prior found themselves in a similar situation. A self-described garage band of game devs, the small, newly founded studio based out of Espoo, Finland, had immense ambitions. The initial steps may have been humble, but as they found their footing, everything they produced sought to try something new. In an industry blooming with new tech, ideas, and creativity, the corporate suits luring around the corner trying to find the most safe way to make profit, they became the opposite. For a medium desperate to take the easy path, they became the remedy.
That's the worst thing I've ever written. Yeah, I'm not changing it, no, but I want you to know that I know that that line is so incredibly full of itself. But that's kind of the point. Remedy, more than maybe any other creative studio I've ever come into contact with, straddles this line to perfection. They know that the stories they tell come from the heart, that they care deeply about them, so why not push the boundaries a little? Why not allow them to be a little silly?
In 1996, Remedy Entertainment had just released their first title. Developed with their very own 3D engine, Death Rally, grown out of the legendary Finnish demo scene, was a near-instant success. 90,000 units shipped from a small independent studio without a budget in the 90s was not only very impressive, but it was nigh on unheard of. The title garnered fans the globe over, and tech-wise it was certainly very impressive, but for the ambitious team, it wasn't it. It had been a taster. Definite proof that they had what it took, but Death Rally wasn't their outlet. It wasn't their story. The team dreamt of something else, something bigger, something many people saw as lacking in the industry they so loved. Remedy had very quickly become a global name, especially within the circles of the booming computer scene, but to me it's clear right from the start that a lot of the inspiration, creativity, and pride running deep within their works is all gathered from their own humble home. I believe everything put into ones and zeros was before coded into bestsellers pulled out of their Finnish upbringing, influencing everything they did. In 1997, when development officially started on what was to become Remedy's rise to superstardom, the media spotlights were not yet trained on the little country half the year cloaked in darkness. And maybe in a sick twist of fate or a carefully planned move, the new project, a groundbreaking stylized noir third-person shooter following a former detective searching for vengeance, was placed in the only location that made sense. In a stroke of familiarity, the Thousand Lakes became a crisscross of never-ending asphalt, and the everlasting birch trees transformed into motionless, concrete monoliths piercing the black. A story of revenge, created in a culture of defying the dark, personified in the city that never sleeps. Max Payne. Released in 2001, it became a pillar of a new age in action video games. The narrative explosion of the late 90s, arguably spearheaded by Valve's Half-Life, was now finally bearing fruit. Studios the world over were realizing that the interactive medium of video games offered up brand new ways to tell stories, and millions upon millions of dollars were getting poured in to cash in on this newly found opportunity.
But Remedy were broke. Death Rally had brought funds in, sure, but for what they wanted to create with Max Payne, it was nothing. Straight from the concept stages, they wanted to break new ground, create something they hadn't seen before. A noir action game, compromising nothing on that vision, but without cash? Where do you go? To see this through, they were going to need something far more than willpower, courage, or to stand tall in the face of adversity. To see this through, they were going to need Sisu.
Deeply coded into the Finnish identity is something that cannot be accurately translated. It's a cultural element running deep within the nation, something taught since childhood, something taken for granted, something setting Remedy apart. For Max Payne, they needed to hold out. Looking back on it, it was almost reckless to dive into such a new, groundbreaking, all-encompassing project so soon after their debut, but a seemingly hopeless situation was exactly what was needed, to stare death in the eyes and continue walking. For that was Sisu. For that was the Remedy.
I believe that the groundwork, forever remaining the foundation of Remedy, was laid right here. They knew that their decision to push for such an ambitious title was a little silly, so they let that run through their whole identity, embraced it and brought it to the forefront. When they needed a frontman to act as the face to the late great James McCaffrey's voice, they had no budget for actors, so writer Sam Lake shouldered the burden, and before you knew it, the self-described constipated grimace of Max Payne was eternalized. A heartfelt development story, forever seeming the obvious choice, but in keeping with their approach, a little silly.
Max Payne ended up selling incredibly well, rushing past the cult classic label and became a must-play for many of the platforms it released on. It showed that the team had been right. Incredibly talented technically, but also from a conceptual standpoint. The hard-boiled story touching the players became a classic on its own, but the way it then bled through into the mechanics and game world was something completely new. Everything was deeply intertwined, and only a few years later they were back at it. In 2003, The Fall of Max Payne came out on store shelves, and with an increased budget and grown team, the follow-up didn't disappoint. But this time, something had been different for the Finnish studio. Max Payne 2 was a step ahead, but it wasn't a revolution. It used its expanded budget, but it didn't recklessly glare into the sun to beat it in a staring contest. And so, the focus started to shift. Remedy sold off the rights to Max Payne in order to move on, explore what else they could create, and dive even deeper into their psyches. You're making this up. Why are you making it so much harder for yourself? There's nothing there in the dark. There's nothing. The words echoed in his mind, doing their best to console him, make him come to his senses, but it was futile. He had seen it. There was something there, something just as real as him, something that had lured in the corners just outside his vision for as long as he'd walked the earth, something that terrified him. And yet, here he stood, for he knew how it must end. He didn't know if he would make it this time, the time after that, or the time after that. But he'd seen the epilogue. He'd written.
In 2005, I must have been in the middle of my Guitar Hero arc, writing little stories that went straight to the recycle bin on my beat-up Windows XP laptop that took a full 10 minutes to boot. I read gaming magazines and longed for the next generation. A lot of the up-and-coming titles blended together for me, with the main thing being that they all looked so much better than my old dusty PS2 games. But there was one. At E3 2005, a new action game was shown. A technically very impressive title taking place in some Pacific Northwest small town. But while the trailer didn't show as much, the main character wasn't someone I had no possibility of relating to. He wasn't a faceless marine, an alien combat expert, or some too old for this cop. No. He was a writer.
Remedy had been putting together a new game. For the last years before their E3 reveal, the Northern studio had been busy at work developing their new engine, and with it, they left behind the concrete jungle where they had made their name, and out their window lay the next step. For miles and miles, unexplored forests as deep as the sea is where they found inspiration, a new direction. For a project set in the darkest woods, a different tale was needed. Writer and the longtime creative that we'd all grown to love for his impeccable Max Payne faces, Sam Lake, had years before development took hold, written a screenplay. Undertow. It was the story of a diver, an old witch, and artifacts from childhood days keeping the dark away. And when the sun hid behind the northernmost hills, clearly it resonated with the team who, by their own words, brought film noir to computer games, set out to do the same with psychological thrillers. In 2010, partnered with Microsoft, and with both technical and narrative expectations reaching sky-high levels, Remedy finally released their new IP. Bright Falls, When Night Springs, in Alan Wake. The Finnish studio's new outing was right in their wheelhouse. A third-person action game with big emphasis on combat and firearms, a dark, slowly developing story, and a want to do it all. But unlike Max Payne, Alan Wake's focus was shifted from gratuitous slow-mo and John Woo-esque dives across the room to a more intimate experience. Alan and his wife Alice are just arriving on the boat for their vacation, to get away from the eternal hustle and bustle that we've seen firsthand in New York City. Alan, desperate to forget everything about his job, leave it at the door and just allow himself to take a break, lose any expectations and just be him for a little bit, soon finds himself struggling for air.
Alan Wake was the first time I felt connected to a character. I've been lucky enough to experience cultural representation far more than others, all since I could walk, but for some reason nothing had resonated as clearly as what Alan did. I was no best-selling author living in an NYC high-rise. I had no successful life or life-or-death escapades on the daily, but I wrote. I wrote a lot. And more importantly, I struggled doing it. I struggled a lot. Alan had written Alex Casey's hard-boiled police novels for the last years, all praised and awarded, but before he'd arrived in the little quaint PNW town of Bright Falls, he'd had writer's block. That's why he was here even. Nothing would come out, at least nothing good, and everything he wrote made it worse. And that was the first time I'd had someone else describe my creative struggles. Albeit maybe a little fantastical, but like many other creatives growing up, no matter what I did, no matter what I created, no matter what I wrote, it only made things worse. I wasn't learning, becoming a better, more experienced writer. I was losing myself. I never fully felt like I had a creative voice. I'd never really gotten there. But with every word, any chance of ever gaining it, felt like he was starting to fade away.
Alan Wake is an action game, through and through, just like Max Payne, but it's an action game where the action seems like an afterthought, a last resort when every other option has been extinguished. It's a game where the main combat mechanic seems to falter almost from frame one. It's a loop of using whatever light you have at your disposal to weaken the enemies and then let fly a couple of quick shots to take them out. It's simple, without much depth, and easy to master even within the tutorial itself. If this was the main attraction, it'd be done for even before release, but it isn't.
How do you feel, Mr. Wake? Any nausea, disorientation, anything like that? Mr. Wake, how are you feeling?
Alan Wake is, just like the inspiration, so much more than what first meets the eye. It's a story through a struggling writer's desperate bouts with his reality, the love of his life bringing him upstate to relax only under the guise of helping him write again, and his constant regrets about how he acted in the past. It's a deep, dark world taking itself incredibly seriously while treading the line of what is real and what is not, never fully letting you grasp the whole scenario.
I insist. You must turn the lights on. Turn the light on. Back to work, boy.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed on a first experience. Max Payne operated in a similar way. Diegetically, the world and characters in the fictional turn-of-the-century New York all took themselves incredibly seriously. There was never any doubt that they were living the life your inputs put them through. But in Max Payne, the relief came from the players seeing Max's grimace staring them in the face and the ridiculous physics-defying leaps the titular hero managed in almost every encounter. Max Payne was self-aware because it was ridiculous, contrasted by a cold, hard world. But Alan Wake? Alan Wake is, through the first half, dead set on delivering you the most stone-faced experience Remedy had ever created, where even the comedic relief characters are limited to telling the main cast to just calm down, at least a little.
Look, Barry, I'm missing a week, and someone's got Alice.
Do
and
you
everything's
understand what it sounds like when you say stuff like that? Don't get me wrong, it's a good story, could be a bestseller. But when you start confusing fiction with reality, you're buying yourself a ticket to the funny farm.
This reflected in the reception of the game when it came out, and even for people playing it today, many players regarding it as simple, non-engaging, and without any depth, and they're right. If you're looking for a romp through action-filled hallways, every combat encounter full of emergent gameplay, or a story with characters easy to relate to, Alan Wake can be seen as fundamentally broken. With the episodic presentation starting every new chapter with a previously on Alan Wake stinger, it's easy to think Remedy has lost a little of that edge that had made them special before. That is until Alan and his manager Barry, forced to run from the dark presence, the destructive influence Wake's writing is having on the world they now find themselves trapped in, out in the middle of the dark, evergreen, Pacific Northwest woods, stumble over an old farm, decorated like a Viking longship, and next to it, a festival stage, with a band name accompanying it. The Old Gods of Asgard.
Ow! Run! Incoming! There's too many of them!
God damn. This is a little silly. It's almost as if they realized, as if Remedy were so caught up in it, so preoccupied with writing and weaving the most elaborate tale they'd yet to tell, that they lost track of time, of who they wanted to be, until the sun came up and they saw the dark depths they'd ended up in. Or it was planned from day one.
Whatever the development plan was, it ended up working. Because once you understand in which direction Alan Wake truly strives, you see it everywhere. And whether that point is at the rock concert or any turn before it, it changes the experience completely. Once Alan puts 2 and 2 together, understanding that his writing affects Bright Falls around him, the small town cliches and dreadfully serious characters are spelled out as signatures of a writer not having ever set foot outside of the big city, while the previously strange, out-of-place Energizer and Ford corporate tie-ins echo the constant pressure pushing down on Alan to include a brand name here or a product line there. And while they most certainly were a way to eke out a little more cash for the publisher, now they become almost ridiculous and somehow self-aware. The semi-monotonous combat system opens up. It isn't trying to be the next Max Payne, it's a storytelling device showing the struggle of Alan being thrown headfirst into an experience he's only ever experienced on paper. He isn't a grizzled combat veteran, he's just written one, and this clash plays out beautifully in the gameplay. The enemy engagements flirt with extreme scenarios and daring last-second escapes, just like if Alan is desperately trying to bring in what he thinks combat is, what he's romanticized it to be, but then finding that when he himself is in the situation he'd put Alex Casey through for years, it's a lot less glamorous. You cannot ever truly be sure of what is real and what is not. Are the characters, the festival scene in Deerfest even real? They sure look like it, but is it just a part of what Alan has written? And if you think I'm reading too much into all of this, I am, but that's kind of the point. Alan Wake is just cloaked in darkness, but behind it is a self-aware masterpiece that fully understands what it's trying to do and why. It's aware that it's taking itself so unbelievably seriously, and it earns that by pulling at your heartstrings and featuring fantastic acting performances, but it plays those cards so close to its chest for hours, only to then, when you least expect it, show their hand and reveal that they were playing Hungry Hippos all this time. And just like that, it transformed my mind. As Alan realized they had what it took, they had a plan. Just like he had brought hell upon himself and everyone around him through his writing, he could write his way out of the dark place. He could write his escape. And so could I. My seemingly ever-present struggles weren't me. They didn't define who I was or what I did. They were a stepping stone. And coming out on the other side, I could laugh at them.
Alan Wake taught me to have fun writing. I liked being over the top, theatrical and overly dramatic, and with exploring and desperately searching for my outlet, drawing most of my inspirations from concept albums, musicals, and 80s action movies, despite what any teacher might tell me, wasn't wrong. Taking yourself so seriously that the darkness is literally dripping off of you wasn't wrong. I just had to remember that at the end of the day, all of it, everything around us, you and me and everything I write, is a little silly.
There had been a time before all of this when the world had seemed to open up. The scribbled pages lay scattered just like before, covering years of memories carved into the floorboards, but they had now, instead of forever acting as a constant reminder of failure, summoned something resonating deep within his very soul. Within the lines of hastily scribbled ideas and concepts, lyrical notes and wishful poetry, he had found something he thought he'd never reach, never gain, and never see. As he stood on the cliffs violently carved out of the earth over millennia, the pitch-black waves crashing below, in the dark before him, he'd found a voice. His voice. The story of Remedy continued on. The reception of Alan Wake ranged from people who fully understood it to those who might not have gotten completely on board, but with the partnership between tech giant Microsoft and the Finnish now powerhouse studio established, work started on the next story. As Remedy had been busy chopping their way through the PNW forest, a ghost of their past was slowly coming back alongside them. The Max Payne that had brought them fame and fortune, shifted the spotlights up north and granted them the opportunity to go their own way, was now under the control of Grand Theft Auto creators Rockstar Games on its way back. Max Payne 3, originally slated for a 2009 release, was shaping up to be another feather in the hat of the gigantic studio, but except for being able to see it in advance and give opinions and critique, Remedy had nothing to do with it. But just like before, this didn't stop them. Remedy had big ideas. Max Payne 3 looked fantastic, just like seemingly everything else that Rockstar would touch, but it was just another Max Payne game, and based on Remedy's past approaches, them just doing another seemed unlikely anyway. The sights were set on another horizon, one where the lines between mediums, let alone genres, were getting blurred. They had flirted with live action scenes all throughout their existence, but in their next endeavor, they would take it to the next level. Together with Microsoft, out of what initially was thought out to be another psychological thriller, the pieces fell together into the time travel-centered, highly anticipated Xbox One and Windows exclusive Quantum Break. The game follows main character Jack Joyce, portrayed by established actor Shawn Ashmore, and its gameplay systems are a clear step from the previous Remedy series. Here, instead of focusing primarily on firearms and tools, instead it gives you time-altering powers, allowing for some truly spectacular scenes that, together with the new tech, transform the battlefields after each engagement. Compared to Alan Wake, it's a tour de force without ilk, and when put aside Max Payne, it's less surgical precision and more brute carnage. It's a solid combat system, leading to genuinely impressive scenes, but where the Remedy-ness shines through is less in the details and more in the overarching concepts.
I've seen the end of time.
Quantum Break is weird. At first glance, it's a third-person action. Well, it's a Remedy game. I think you can see that clear as day. But as you get into the swing of things, it shifts, and it's also like a full-on TV show. Like Lance Reddick is in this, and Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, and Mary from Lord of the Rings. It's weird.
It's a wild concept. You play a video game for an hour and then you're sitting there for 20 minutes watching a Dead to Rights TV show. It's Kojima's wet dream. It's absurd, ridiculous, and I fully get why some people wouldn't like this at all, but zoomed out, seeing the bigger picture, it makes sense. And it changing and adapting to how you handle situations in the game sections of the game is whispering of a staggering amount of behind-the-scenes work. It's ludicrous. It's wonderfully ambitious. It's a little silly.
I played Quantum Break a few years after it released, and I remember going in that I thought it held up remarkably well, even as the industry evolved rapidly around it. There are clear issues with the immensely ambitious title, ones that have probably been discussed to death. I always found it weird that the reloads never actually swapped magazines. That felt like a weird oversight, but I think that's besides the point. It's unmistakably Remedy, maybe to a fault, and with its bombastic combat taking the place of Alan Wake's more careful survival, it's easy to think of it as a next step. A completely isolated, separate, and standalone Remedy universe. But is that really all there was to it?
Year 17. I started to explore what writing really was to me. A peek into the dark to pull out something no one ever seen before. New worlds, new ideas, new concepts, all influenced and inspired by a coming of age fundamentally mine. Hard-boiled crime stories, sickeningly sweet rom-com screenplays, and poetry so full of itself that it caused whiplash from the eye rolls. All of it was dumb, idiotic, stupid, and way too serious, but I knew that. And with that knowledge, I felt invincible.
But I missed Alan. I still played video games. Still loved the medium as something truly new, something truly revolutionary, still related to characters and cried to stories told, but Nothing resonated as clearly as what Bright Falls had done. Problem was, Alan Wake was a perfect standalone title. It ended things just like it started and went on a completely uncertain point. But that was always going to be the point, wasn't it? There was no happy ending in Bright Falls. There was a writer and a lake.
And so the DLCs that released and took place after the main chapters never fully made sense to me. It carried on the tale of a story that was, in my mind, as wrapped up as it needed to be, and I failed to see what they added, and so I filed them away. Maybe Microsoft just wanted to eke out a little more cash again. This was just extracurricular activities, and the focus now was on Quantum Break.
But that also didn't mesh. It was huge, grandiose, and completely new, and sure, I couldn't expect another character to hit the same spot Alan had done, but Quantum Break at times felt like a bunch of giant ideas thrown together hoping they'd combine. And with the transition from Max Payne to Alan Wake being as seamless as to almost suggest they'd exist in the same universe, the pivot to Quantum Break and its bombastic combat experience always felt like a leap a little too far. Like, yeah, these were separate worlds with nothing connecting them, but it didn't feel like that should be the case.
Following the release of Alan Wake, speculation of where Remedy would go next was all over internet forums. Leaks, baseless rumors, and wishful thinking clouded up the airwaves to such an extent that it completely obscured the vision for what Remedy were doing. Alan Wake's American Nightmare followed its debut bigger sibling in 2012, and with Remedy saying it shouldn't be considered a full-on sequel, it didn't exactly set the world on fire. It was more than the 2 DLCs, more expansive than an add-on pack, but it was short, cheap, and looked at first glance just like the original. Alan Wake's American Nightmare is a tiny game. Limited development time, reused assets, and backtracking built right into the main premise. It's the quintessential Xbox Live Arcade title. But even when all the stars line up for a safe Remedy release just to cash in on their previous successes, they don't. Stripped of all his gear, Alan wakes up in another story of his creation, but only 4 steps in, he's once again armed, and only a few minutes later, the oh-so-elusive shotgun of the original is right back where it belongs, and any second guesses about using it are quickly thrown out the window. The careful survival and resource hoarding of Alan's debut is gone, completely done away with and replaced with a confidence in his combat abilities. He's been here long enough now, trapped at the bottom of Cauldron Lake. He's not relying on what he's written for Casey. Alan is the action hero now, and the game does it all to make sure you won't forget that. Ammo stations are littered around every corner, flares, flashbangs, and batteries are spewing out of the walls, and as the enemies rush towards you in numbers previously unseen, you firing fully automatic rifles and machine guns running amok like never before, it clicks. The abundance of live action segments, the time loop mechanics, and the bombastic combat. Maybe Remedy didn't just decide to go do Quantum Break, maybe they tried their things, concepts, and ideas here in American Nightmare, in Night Springs. Maybe they bridged it, connected it all, not in terms of story, world, or narrative, but in terms of concepts. A through line of some sort of giant, connected Remedy megaverse. After all their releases had always been just as much about the games themselves as they had been about who was making them.
Oh, come on. Tell me I'm not reading too much into it now. But American Nightmare did piece it together for me. When I finally sat down to play it, it felt like the key that unlocked what Remedy were doing and where they were going, bridging the old Remedy to the new. With it, it felt like they understood their vision just a little bit more, understood their abilities, and grew more confident.
Year 23.
There were worlds within me. Worlds that I existed in as much as I did the real one. Worlds that were bad, great, horrible, fantastic, revolutionary, incredible, supreme, and absolutely disastrous. But no matter what, they were mine. I wrote more than I did anything else. Every breath was followed by a word, every heartbeat space, every blink brought a new world. Stories, novels, poems, lyrics, ideas, manuscripts, screenplays, videos. The voice I was sure I'd never get was tested. Every medium, every concept, every line, every word. The uncertainties of the outside, the insecurities, the doubts forever fogging up the lens tuned out, almost silenced. The dream of having an outlet for my creativity, to find an idea, visualize it, and then create it, putting it on paper right in front of me. The only dream I'd ever had. It was right there, deep within these worlds. For the first time, I was in control. Oh, come on! It was always going to end up back here, wasn't it? It's like some unbreakable tether forever keeping them in line, even as everything around them falls apart. One, far in the north, cold, desolate, dark. And then this one, the greatest city on earth, where dreams go to die. Funnily enough, I grew up on these streets. Used to know them like the back of my hand. Some of the bullet holes are probably still visible down there, behind the posters. Used to run them through and through, time and time again. And yet, this building, I can't shake it. I can't place it. It's new. Completely dreamt up, and yet it's always been here. I know that look. You think there's a dog buried in this?
Quantum Break came and went. A huge stepping stone for mixed media releases, and with the critical reception remaining favorable, it kept the hype for Remedy's project at an even level. But shortly after its release, things started to feel strange. There was a deafening silence coming from the Northern studio. They worked on projects, jacked into other studios' development, and weren't MIA in any sort of way. But as the partnership with Microsoft fizzled out after the release of Quantum Break, the long-running publishing deal that had seen them all from Alan Wake to now, many players wondered what was to become of Remedy.
We all thought he wasted his research grant, his career, obsessing over some failed experiment. That's what he led us to believe. What he built there, it never failed.
They had always been tight-lipped. Until the time was right, there was a real sense of calm emanating from the studio's press releases, so nothing was really out of the ordinary. And yet the air around the whole situation felt different. Their world still lay where they'd always been, off in their own little corner of the collective unconscious, but it was as if the space around them started to rumble. P7. That's all we got. In 2017, a single heartbeat pinpointing signs of life in the ongoing earthquake. P7. Remedy were alive, and they were cooking something up behind the scenes. Coming down from the Microsoft push releases costing millions upon millions and spanning dev times closer to decades, this one was different. A year after Quantum Break, P7. A year after that, a reveal trailer, and a year after that, with the Finnish studio independent on its own and fully self-commanded, Control. Control released in August of 2019, and immediately it was clear, beyond any reasonable doubt, that without ever being gone, Remedy were back, and in full force. The connecting bridge of America's nightmare to unlock Quantum Break's vision wasn't needed here. There was no reason for any required reading. Control was an evolutionary step from everything that the studio had done before, and it was one taken in stride. The deep-set mystery that had become synonymous with Remedy's narrative stylings were flowing out of every crevice, and the combat scenarios from the first steps, being able to turn any Cold War-looking office into a fine mist within seconds, was exactly what Quantum Break strove for, but better, bigger, and bolder. There was no cautiousness in Control's gameplay systems. This was Remedy at their most confident, assertive, and unshakable. But as the dust settled, the gunshots rang out, and the voices trembled, this was also Remedy at their most vulnerable. The oldest house. The game kicks off as you, in the shoes of Jesse Faden, arrive at the front door of the Federal Bureau of Control, right in the middle of New York City, in search of answers about your missing younger brother. A simple introduction as any other. A girl, an imposing secretive governmental agency, and a building that has always stood here, and yet it hasn't. It's new, and at the same time as old as time itself.
Immediately something is off. Everyone's gone. It's desolate, foreboding, and, well, empty. Around the corner, the hushed tones of a man humming along to his Walkman can be heard, making their way shyly down the corridor. That's Ati, by the way. He's the janitor. Is your boss, in case you've forgotten. Speaking of which, I think you're late for your interview. Better speed it up. Director Faden.
Very good. I'm Ahti, the janitor, by the way. You'll work for me. You can say I sent you. If they don't hire you, Johan helvet. There be work for the axe. Take them behind the sauna, jumalauta.
I've done enough night shift loner jobs to know it makes us come off weird. Ahti the janitor is a friendly face in my book.
Better than somebody with no face at all.
Control is weird. For the first hours, every turn is making you question what is real and what is not, and you only need to Google any combination of Control, don't understand, to find legions of people desperately searching for any form of clarity in the first stumbling sprints. This, of course, is the plan. Control is weird. Objects of power, places of power, altered items, and altered world events. The world of the FBC is rife with new terms and concepts relating to the paranatural. It is its job at the end of the day, and now it's yours as well. Ranging from massive occurrences shifting the very nature of space to strange objects being locked up to keep them from altering the lines of our existence, the setting Control places you in the middle of is seemingly just as deep as you want to go diving.
You're a fish out of water, thrust into a new pond of which you've just been made queen. And its problems are now your problems. People are counting on you, Director. Better go clean it up.
Well done. You got the job. It's place for congratulations. Yippee, saatana.
The weird isn't just relating to the setting, and the previously touched on combat is just as much a step into the unknown. There are still guns, but instead of the realistic adaptations Remedy pushed out before, this time they are extensions of the weird, shifting, altering appearance as their function evolves, and alongside them Jesse quickly masters a number of dimension-shifting powers that had put any Jedi to shame. It's carnage in its purest, freshest, and newest form, but as the scenery disintegrates around you in every element, you can trace something back to what came before. There are connections all over. There had always been, of course, little Easter eggs, references within every Remedy world that cutely paid homage to their creations, points of appreciation for players that had stuck with them, dual 9mm pistols in Alan Wake's office reminding us of Max, lecture notes on Bright Falls at the Quantum Break campus making us reminisce, and the inclusions of Death Rally arcade machines in Night Springs. Small, innocent little visual cues scratching that nostalgia itch, but also conduits for what had always laid below the waves. And all throughout the FBC's twisting hallways and physics-defying stairwells, everything fit neatly into the near-endless collection of altered items. It feels almost like a museum. A collection of everything Remedy had ever done is here. Among baby blue coffee thermoses, cutely named cigarette brands, and talks of an old metal band is a combat system straight from American Nightmare and Quantum Break, a mysterious, reality-altering narrative taking pages from Alan Wake, and the stylings of character writing stemming all the way back from Max Payne.
These are separate worlds, all disconnected, but somehow through their concepts, all leading into one another. One thread starting in one point, continuing through the act of human creativity seamlessly in another. A collection of work, all intricately and inseparably linked, despite having no actual narrative connections. Control was the cause of the rumbling that shook away the fog around these Remedy worlds, revealing this carefully crafted web of connections. They may not actually exist in the same universe. There's no possibility that Alan would ever run into Max or Jesse. It'd be more likely he'd run into Alex Casey, his own creation, but that's the beauty of it. This rift, forever keeping these worlds separated, is the one thing you can count on. The one thing that's keeping these experiences in check, because otherwise it'd be chaos.
Luck out there.
Darkness engulfed the elevator. There was something there, reaching for her, trying to make her act. It was a distress call. Faden sensed a drowning man, a hunger in the dark. Investigation sector.
Investigation sector, huh? We should check this out.
They're not just references. They're not just Easter eggs, they're clues. They talked about wanting to do another since 2010, maybe even before they released the original. They talked about how deep this go. Alan has been gone since 2010. Disappeared under Cauldron Lake, and he's been gone ever since. The Dark Presence following him, the Dark Presence in control. They're not real. They're not making. What if they wanted to make another? They never did. They never did. Alan is gone. He's been gone since 2010, since they stopped. He's not here. He's under Cauldron Lake. It's not a lake.
It's an ocean.
His voice. Once a dream longed for, never thought achievable, beyond reach, grasped out of the teeth of time, from the deepest recesses of the darkest woods, from far below the thundering waves, found. It pushed him, allowed him to look up, see the road ahead, and reach out, a connection to the world around him that had always felt cold, distant, harsh, an invitation written out to himself to take a step off the cliff and enjoy the fall, to trust it would carry ideas, verses, stories, poems, worlds brought into existence for nothing but pure exploration of what they could contain, what they could bring, the ecstasy of creation, birthing life from his voice, as if by the speed of light, ideas crafted together, as if by the speed of thought, concepts scribbled down, but in the darkest night, as if by the speed of sound, his voice speaking words streaming from unconscious thought, had trembled.
I tried. For as hard as I had courage for, I gave it everything to try and make it. To take my voice, my creativity, my ecstasy, and twist it. Make it line up with what our civilized world would deem acceptable, would deem profitable, and make a living out of it. I couldn't imagine myself another life, so I tried. And so I failed. Failed because I couldn't adapt, couldn't bear to take my voice, what I've found, nurtured and held closer than anything before, and twist it to see it used as a tool for someone else. I failed not because of inability or incompetence, but unwillingness. The only life I could imagine was not one I wanted. Dead-end jobs, careers in places I for years wanted out of, seasons of schoolings for diplomas I'd hide from myself. After the first tremble, the missteps defined me. The failures were so deeply ingrained that it was hard to see any other trait. If I could just go back, tell myself to fix it, tell young me all the pitfalls, the missteps, the wrong turns, maybe it could have been different. Maybe it could have been something else. Maybe it could have been good. It's so dumb. I can't shake it. I can't help myself but to think of Alan Wake. Nothing but a figment of someone else's creative vision put on screen. A collection of polygons meaning nothing in the real world. And yet when everything crumbles, when friends and family are so far and few between, he is what I can't shake.
I understood what I had to do now. I knew how to write the ending to Departure. There's light and there's darkness. Cause and effect. There's guilt and there's atonement. But the scales always need to balance. Everything has a price. That's where Zane had gone wrong. There's a long journey through the night back into the light.
I can't shake how for years I thought I was alone. How me and me alone could see what was so special about Alan's long-awaited psychological forest hike. How me and me alone thought it lived up to the hype and transcended it in every aspect. How me and only me sat here and couldn't shake it. But come August 2020, that worldview was flipped on its head completely. Remedy had talked for years about how they had a special connection with Alan Wake, and at some point it felt like every interview was bookended with a comment about how they wanted to make another. But with the roadblocks of Microsoft owning the rights and the lukewarm public opinion about the original, it seemed to eclipse any desire to push through. So maybe they started here, took where their creativity had taken them to and tinkered on. Control's first downloadable content release continued on diving into the deep underlying conspiracy of the FBC, but the second one was wildly different.
That doesn't look like a house shift.
AWE. Altered World Event. A term any Control playthrough should have burned into any director's mind. A term describing paranatural elements affecting and changing, altering our reality. A central theme to Control, to the FBC, and to the Remedy universe. A bombastic, clever, and obvious title to grant your last piece of content relating to altering the world. Or Alan Wake Expansion.
It's my double. He's out there. I've seen him.
Yeah. Nothing to worry about. I'm dealing with it. It's fine, my friend. Let me handle him.
You've met him? What the hell?
Now, come on. You misunderstand me.
That was Alan Wake, the writer who went missing in that AWE case I read about. What's he doing here?
It had sideswiped me completely. I'm sure it was an open secret at the time that Remedy was gearing up for Alan's return. I'm sure they left a trail of breadcrumbs in their world to lead you to knowing the reveal was about to happen, but I thought the world of Alan Wake was gone, reduced to cute Easter eggs of a simpler time. So to get a full in-universe explanation for the Bright Falls incident as an altered world event, make contact and a promise of return was unbelievable. All the pieces fell into place so neatly that I couldn't believe I didn't put it together beforehand.
Ma'am, I'm getting something on my terminal here, an AWE alert from Bright Falls, Washington. But it might be a glitch. The date's all wrong, a couple of years in the future. And we're in lockdown, there shouldn't be any incoming signals.
Remedy had reacquired the license from Microsoft. Alan Wake was once again theirs and theirs alone, and the AWE expansion was full proof of that. It was Control at its most developed, Jessie as powerful as she would be, and the scenarios as complex as they grew to become. But among them, intermingled a crucial psychological twist lay. The remnants of Alan, deep below Cauldron Lake, with page after page reaching out, not to his past or in an attempt to alter what had started all of it, but to the future. That someday, sometime, we might need it. He struggled to write. He couldn't think of what to say. Not that it mattered, he thought. No one would see it. It was an exercise in desperation, purely. As the lights flickered, he remembered an old teacher who had told him that when things looked hopeless, write to yourself. A younger you, a new you. A you yet to see what you've seen, yet to feel what you felt. Tell them how you got here. He let the pen bounce restlessly on the paper. What was the point? Even if he chose to believe nothing would come of it, he would still be here, and the young recipient would still make the same mistakes. Alan has been missing for 13 years. In 2023, his disappearance is all but relabeled as a death. 13 years later, the world has moved on. 13 years later, Bright Falls is busy planning another Deerfest, and 13 long years later, Remedy are making their return.
In a horror story, there are only victims and monsters. And the trick is not to end up as either.
A title of unseen production values, not only for the Northern studio, but for many avenues of the industry. Control had been a huge hit, and it's easy to imagine the fully self-developed project sending a surge of confidence through the corridors at the Finnish studio. Confidence leading to a brand new publishing deal, setting them up for yet another massively ambitious project. They were on top of the world. They could go anywhere, do anything. Remedy was highly regarded as one of the freshest, most creative voices in immersive media. Anything they would make would be massively successful. So what do they make? What does the writing team and the creatives at this legendary studio pen this time? How about a cult classic 2010 title, fondly remembered by some and completely disregarded by many? How about a sequel to that? Oh boy. Wouldn't that be a little silly?
Kuin painajainen hän luoksesi saapuu, hänet verhot tuon varjojen kaapuun. Monta tarinaa hänestä kerrotaan, häntä pakoon et pääse sä milloinkaan. Hän peilistä sua tuijottaa, murhan polte se kruunoi mua. Tuon katseen tunnet et voi unohtaa, vaik kasvot piiloutuu veriverhon taa.
2 years after the mysterious reveal in 2021, Alan Wake 2 was 13 years after its predecessor released, and if you, by any way, kept up with the gaming media around the time, it was impossible to miss. The game was an instant success, a massive critical hit praised all over the industry, and once award season came around, it was shortlisted for almost any and all categories. It was the whole package. Not only did it pay reverence to its older sibling, but it revamped, restarted, and refreshed the whole formula, possibly drawing inspiration from a new wave of survival horror, the tense psychological thriller of the original, morphed by the blackness of night into a completely different beast. Alan Wake 2 is scary. With it, Remedy took aim at a completely different place than the series or the studio had ever gone before: downright horror. The characters were now slower, moved more methodically, and keeping your weapon at the ready at all times became a more and more important trait. The game does everything it can to keep you on edge, taking elements that the series had experimented with in the past and twisting them, turning them into altered, barely recognizable phrases. The light previously acting as safe havens, disintegrating any and all foes from the vicinity as you stepped into it, clearing out the waters, now became nothing more than a place to catch your breath. The threat is still there. You're still low on ammunition and completely out of flares, and you're shipwrecked on your own little island. But the thing that stands out is that the game, while putting heart and soul into making you as tense, as scared as possible under the hood, doesn't feel like it does anything at all. It treats you as if you're nothing more than a slight inconvenience. This masterclass in world building doesn't seem to have set up this roller coaster ride of horrific attractions for you in the slightest. It's evolved, grown out of the dark that its underbelly spread, and you just happened to stroll through, and now you have to deal with it. American Nightmare was an exercise in destruction, giving you a near endless supply of resources, but the original Alan Wake was a more careful experience. It put a pretty restrictive cap on your ammunition supply, leading to eagle-eyed players feeling a little cheated when Alan just decided that his tweed coat apparently couldn't hold more than 25 rifle cartridges even in the face of endless dark. But Alan Wake 2 approaches this problem in a far more interesting way. Instead of telling you that no, you can't carry anymore because we say so, it consistently keeps you just above the waterline. The enemies are tough, take multiple shots, and their erratic movements as they come towards you force a panic-induced response, wasting even more resources. But I never fell to an empty chamber. There were times where the last 2 rounds felt like the end of the world, but around the corner, in a box, cache, or cooler, always more. Not many, mind you, but a couple. Enough to see me through the next encounter, and the few times I was resourceful enough to save up for a little while, any magazine replenishment was nowhere to be found. As if the world saw how I was doing, and behind this veneer of looking straight through you, it guided me, pushed me along just enough to allow me to see what else it had created that it didn't care for in the slightest. These systems, operating behind the scenes, keeping you desperate, on edge, and tenser than hell, extend to the whole world. The world of Alan Wake 2 doesn't have rules, directives, or guidelines for how to survive. In the first few hours, it follows the basic tenets of common sense. If it's coming towards you brandishing a weapon looking mean, it's probably best to be ready for an altercation, but in the game's darkest places, even these rules fall apart. And the game thrives on this. The shadows encroaching on you from every corner and through every overlap are as real as the faithfully recreated New York subway tiles are. Or are they? The game establishes this dynamic of never fully letting you lower your guard, and even on repeat playthroughs or retreads through similar areas, you are never fully sure who and what is real. The segments in the dark place are exhausting, and even after a short chapter, I needed to step away to catch my breath, for just a minute. The way the game grabs you tight by the shoulders, shows you how to take your first steps, but then never lets go, even when you think things are safe, is something I've never experienced from fiction before. You're right in the middle of it, someone clambering all over you, but alone. Completely alone. The world doesn't care. It's completely out of your control.
Here we are, Cauldron Lake.
Time to get to work.
Saga Anderson, FBI. The seasoned bureau agent is sent to the Pacific Northwest to investigate a string of murders in the area. A small town just in the process of setting up this year's annual festival. A small town just like any other, but a small town strangely unfazed by the goings-on just outside its limits. Something smells off. There's something deeper going on here in Bright Falls. The story that Alan Wake 2 tells introduces a whole new cast of characters, completely unprepared for what is about to happen to them. It's a story picking up the loose ends from the original these 13 years later. It's a story of trust and of losing control, and it's a story in two halves, perfectly representing the two types of people now visiting Bright Falls. The new faces, previously untainted, the hopeful, the reasonable, the calm and logical, the Saga Andersons. The ones sent here because of an exciting case, because of 1,000 awards. But flipped, in the nightmare for 13 years crawling out of Cauldron Lake come the others. The ones speaking in riddles, the ones rambling about a through line, the ones finally allowed to see the future. The Alan Wakes.
Where did you come from? You've been missing for 13 years.
13.
Alan Wake 2 is certainly a Remedy story, through and through. Looking back on their previous releases, one particular quote comes to mind. At an IGN-hosted interview following the reveal of Control, lead writer and longtime Remedy legend Sam Lake stated as a short aside,
In some ways, I'm always excited when I feel something is maybe, almost like too smart for me, that I have the feeling that if I crack this, I understand something more, but I'm not quite understanding it. I'm really fascinated of these things.
And looking at how Alan Wake 2 treats the story started 13 years earlier, this passionately delivered addendum is the key that unlocks it. The world of Alan Wake 2 doesn't fully care that you 100% understand anything. Loose threads are picked up, pondered, and then brought behind the curtain. You suspect them to be tied together, but are never fully shown. It alludes to major revelations, but never carves them into stone, and any question definitely answered births 3 more. Any Remedy world thought solved is always countered by a simple "what about this?" and Alan Wake 2 is no different. It is vague, ambiguous, and with the world always hiding its rules and framework from you in true psychological horror fashion, you can't trust anything.
Stephen King once wrote that nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had in explanations. They're antithetical to the poetry of fear. In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there can be no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and it's what we'll remember in the end. My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
I'm nothing. I'm a ghost taking up space. Going day to day without ever really existing. Stuck doing what I can't. The joy of creativity defined everything I cared for. Thinking up places never visited, sharing them with people inquisitive to explore. But it fell through. Writer's block. Time's ever forward march and the need to profit. The one dream I had allowed myself to have no longer dared to be dreamt. If I could just go back to when everything I cared for was a straight path of ideas and explorations, back when there was life in between these pages, in between these lines. If I could just, for once, twist it around, have it obey my will, reach back to young me, tell him all the pitfalls, all the wrong turns and all the missteps, to take it seriously at every turn and at every word. Look for a way out. It doesn't work like that, does it?
The darkest of dark. The end of life as it's known. The endless night. But the night is only so because it's bookended by the dawn. A birth of light as the world transforms, washing over it, bringing life back to its domain. But not this time. A nightless night. A forever dark, never ending. Life not extinguished in explosive fashion, but let whimper in the shadows. A battle fabled since the ushering in of time itself, rushed across within moments. Its battlefields lay unscarred and unmarked. A perfect horror experience. A nightless night. That is what Remedy put together. An experience where the dark lay so thick it was hard to breathe. Step after step, despite their best efforts, Saga and Alan both sinking deeper into the murky waters with no escape in sight. Alan Wake 2 was heavier, denser, and more oppressive than anything the studio had ever done before. It felt helpless, at turns completely hopeless, and almost overbearing at the very thought of the task before them. It was Remedy's crowning achievement. Among a treasury of jewels and gold as far as the eye can see, this one glimmered the brightest. Every alleyway the game walked down was mastered, every element as close to perfectly designed as was realistically possible, and one only needed to cast a glimpse at the lovingly crafted worlds to see the amount of technical and artistic mastery at play. It's a game deeply serious about being what it is, a nightless night. But is that really what it should be? Is that really what an Alan Wake sequel is? What Remedy set out to make? Alan is writing for his life. Stuck in the dark place, he's crafting the story, altering the world around him. He's desperate for an escape. If he could just twist it, rewrite the parts that don't work, go back, scratch out the parts that don't make sense, erase the dead ends, the missteps, and the fruitless explorations only leading deeper into the lake. Someone's writing the story ahead of him, laying out the path and trying to escape, but he can't let that happen. He's not ready. He needs more time to stay, more time to plan. He's scared. Terrified. Alan Wake 2 is the darkest Remedy has ever been, the most immersive an experience they've ever created, and if only looked at the overarching ideas, the most stone-faced serious one as well. And if this is how it would have been released, it would have been a masterpiece. A survival horror experience worth the mantle and discussed as a gleaming gem in the genre for years. A grown-up, no-holds-barred, scary-as-hell journey through the nightmare. But it's Remedy. So it wasn't.
Anything good on that jukebox?
We try to do good, but only Prime comes out. Music from my Swedish brothers, old gods of Asgard. My pals, Perkele Vikings, Perkele.
Unlike Alan Wake 1, there is no moment where it clicks. No singular point where the vision falls into place and transcends the grime of the rest of the world. Those elements are already all over Alan Wake 2. Be they the phase of a long-time fan favorite, the abundance of lovingly light-hearted reference to their own Finnish culture, or clever character reintroductions, but there is a defining one. A moment where everything comes together. deep in the darkest of places where no light has ever pierced, in a world so cloaked in despair that even the most light-hearted elements can't convince you that it's self-aware, you have to push even further. In a world of nightless night, we sing.
From what I've gathered, you grew up nice and sheltered with mama's pretty stories and your own made-up fury.
And mama gave me a magic clicker. Well, yes, I think it's true and fair to say. Come on in and listen, lost words you've been missing. Now the fire you're bearing, the eye of the darkness you're lying.
Remedy are a little silly. A musical number, strayed in the middle of a survival horror game. A billion studios could try, but only one could make it work. Only one could make it fit in. Never make you bat an eye and hum it for the rest of the day. Of course, the old gods of Asgard should headline a musical number right in the middle of Alan Wake 2. Of course, Alan should sing in it, and of course it should star Sam Lake dancing in it. Of course it should. Because it's a Remedy. The years of planning, effort, and love by all the people working on the title are defined in this one moment. Every object, every texture, every sound effect, every written line of code point in the same direction, but here, in these 10 or so minutes, they play a symphony. Survival horror redefined, brought outside the confines of the game itself and reapplied to the experience as a whole. Remedy care deeply about everything they've ever created, written, or made. That much is clear from the first glimpse at any of their work, but here it's put into words. Defined. For no other reason would Herald of Darkness come together. They care.
One morning, I saw a deer soar past my bedroom window. It was a balloon of some cartoon animal. And I looked out at the street below, and I saw a little girl crying. Like losing that balloon had just ended her whole world. It was the perfect image of the horror of caring. And that's when I got myself out of bed. And I picked up my camera.
The horror of caring. It's scary. Scary to love something for a time might come when you can't express it anymore. It's horrifying. Horrifying to create. To put your heart, your soul into something and let it out. A part of you, your creativity, your ability, and your voice. And let it free unto the world for everyone else to make of it what they will. Let them tear it apart. Let them love it. Let them see it for what it is, for what they perceive, for what it isn't. It's not yours anymore. It's everyone's now. Part of a greater world, and you can't control it. You can't reach out, go back. That step is made. And it's make or break. It's scary to care. Scary when your plans fall through, when your dreams shatter, and when you fail. It's scary to try. Because at one point you gave effort into believing that you could, and yet you stumbled. You gave it all you had, put everything into it, and fell. It's the horror of caring, the end of the world, the nightless night. A night without the dawn to follow it. A forever state of dark never ending, never ceasing, is a point of perspective. One can't have the dark without the light, and a nightless night is no more forever dark than it is forever bright. Whether you define the night by the dawn that follows it or the dusk that precedes it, is a point of perspective. And so is every fall, every stumble, every failure, and every tumble. It's a constant horror creeping in on all sides to try, to create, to care. Is the loss of a dream defined by you losing hope or by the fact that you had it in the first place? Because at one point you cared, you believed, you looked out at the horizon and saw a future to dream of, to care for, a place where you could envision yourself happy. It allowed you to trust yourself, your abilities, your tenacity, and your voice. An invitation you wrote out to yourself to take a step off the cliff and believe it would carry. It's all a point of perspective. When you went soaring down into the ravine below, was that the dream defined? Or is it still being written?
I'll show you the herald of darkness, lost in a never-ending night, diving deep to the surface. I got so preoccupied with wanting to make the path perfect, that no mistakes were to be made and for all the pieces to fall perfectly into place. But the missteps, the falls don't define me. A fall, if you get up again, is just a tumble. Just a silly little tumble. I can't leave pages out for a younger me to find. I can't be a guiding light in the dark to tell myself that life is gonna be good. It's gonna end up all right and it's gonna be worth going through. But I can go the other way. I was so set on being the end, the final chapter, the dream completed, the one with everything under control and everything put in its place and neatly squared away. For only then could I possibly be of help, but I'm not. And I don't think I'll ever be. I have no clue where I am in this snapshot of the universe. I have no clue where I'm going, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm another start in another freeze frame of the cosmos, in another silly little place. And at some point, some me might just need that. We're all kept in line through the steady march of time, unable to twist it to our wants, but play by its rules, swim with its waves, and write along its lines. And your words will carry on until forever. The writer brought up in the dark of light, the Paracosm, reflecting the nightless night. So this video I'm shooting on the floor where I belong.